Welcome to Landmarks, the podcast where we explore the journey of living for God. In today's episode, we sit down with Sister Bri Valdez from Faith Mountain Pentecostal Church in Lakeside, California. Sister Bri was raised in church and from a young age had a deep desire to be used by God. At just 13 years old, that prayer was tested in an unimaginable way. Tune in as she shares her incredible story of strength, faith, and perseverance, all while she continued to faithfully dance with God. Well, praise the Lord, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Landmarks podcast. We're so thankful for all the support and those that tune in to listen. We are very excited for today's episode. We have a very good friend of mine. Her and her husband are very good friends of my wife and mine, and we have lots of similarities. Sister Bri Valdez grew up with my wife and Brother Eddie. Seems like we grew up together in our own worlds, but very similar. But anyway, Sister Bri, thank you so much for taking the time and agreeing to come onto the podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, awesome. So today, just like the other episodes, we want you to just tell your story, your testimony, your journey of what God has done in your life, really from as far back as you want to go up until now. And what I usually say is, how did you get here? How did you get to where you're at today? And you can go into as much detail as you want. You can leave out as much as you want. But we just want to hear of your journey.
Yeah. All right. Well, my name is Brianna Valdez. I am 31 years old, and some of you might know me as a HGR daughter. But my dad was on the podcast before, Brother Hoffer, and his testimony is kind of part of my testimony, that in the way that God put my parents' marriage back together. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. And so I'm just going to get right into it. As far back as that is when my parents were having a rocky start in their marriage. My dad started going to church and finding God. And I think I was about 2.5 years old. My dad would take me to House of Faith, which was our church at the time. That was the name of it. And so I started going there and been going to Faith Mountain since I was about 2.5. So I pretty much born and raised in church. So I'm just going to preface that my brain, I'll probably forget some details, but I'm just going to say it how I remember it.
Yeah, that's it.
So, so I was 2.5, started to go to House of Faith with my dad, and God really did a work in my parents' marriage. And so that was incredible, and how God did that. And so then what kind of starts coming into what starts playing into my life story or into my testimony is when I was about 9 years old, I started praise singing. I was singing every service. Our church was very small at the time. And so it was, I think I was really the only young person or kid, really, 9 years old. I mean, I still can't believe it that I was praise singing.
That's kids for our age these days, right?
I know. Praise singing every service at that age. But it definitely was a big responsibility, but I arise to the challenge.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I loved every part of it and would sing trios with Chantel and David and just others as well. And really enjoyed that. But that really started my journey in, I would say, really living for God and knowing God on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
That commitment just to uh, praise team practice and doing things for God's kingdom uh, started putting more responsibility on me.
Sure, and you kind of started growing in God, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's just a testament to praise singing. When you're
Yeah,
singing, you're not just singing up there. You're really giving God praise,
right.
and it's a spiritual thing up there. What you're doing.
Yeah. And so as a little girl, I mean, I was 9, to be doing that was a huge deal for me.
Yeah.
I was singing with all the adults, you
Sure.
know, and
Yeah.
I'm just this little girl learning how to sing parts and
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Sister Bertram really did put a lot of time and effort, like she still does to this day, into us. And so I would say that's where my, like, I had gotten baptized probably around that time. Like, I think I was actually a little younger, probably like 7 or 8
Mm-hmm.
when I got baptized.
When did you get the Holy Ghost?
You know, I think it was like May. I have it written down in my Bible. May 1999.
Wow.
So maybe I was actually younger. Maybe I was like 6 when I got the Holy Ghost.
Wow.
I think it's May 1999.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of when my walk with God maybe started to develop a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And getting God maybe for myself is
Sure.
really how you would describe it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, let's just fast forward a little bit. So yeah, when I was it was probably between like 10 and 12 years old, I would just hear like different preachers or different people coming through our church, and they were being like mightily used by God.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of intrigued me because I was like, dude, these people are powerhouses for God. I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get there? And so anyway, I would see that and I would hear my dad pray. I'd hear other women pray in our church, in the prayer room of our old church. And I'd be praying and just asking God, like, if you can use anything, like, use me. And I know it's super cliche, or, you know, probably a lot of people say that, but I would just be like, God, I want to be mightily used by you. I don't know how I will be, but I want to be. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many powerful people that they've drank alcohol, taken drugs,
Sure.
and they are being mightily used by you.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty much grew up in church, and I remember one instance praying in the prayer room and just being super loud. My dad always used to pray super loud. I remember that as a kid, him walking in the church house and just hearing his voice like echo, you know. And so that's how I started praying, just praying super loud and
Trying
just
to pray like Brother Hoffer.
yeah, just really
Deep voice.
just getting God's attention is
Sure.
how I almost
Yeah.
saw it, you know.
And you're 10 years old at this time.
Yeah, between 10 and like 12.
Wow.
And anyway, I remember one instance that I was praying in the prayer room and just like, God, if you can use anything, God, use me. And I don't know how I'm going to get there. I've lived for you practically all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never backslide, or I don't have the testimony of backsliding or doing something. I was a very I wanted more. When I was talking to my husband Eddie about this, it was like, as a kid, I just wanted more.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it other than that. I saw so many powerful people, and they had a lot of the testimony was that they walked away from God or had tried other things from this world
Sure.
that made them relate with others
Sure.
that they were talking to. And I didn't have that. And so as a kid, I just remember thinking, man, I just want to be powerfully used by you, God. I want a testimony.
Yeah.
I wanted something more. And so that's not for everybody. This is just how I felt as a kid.
Sure. Sure.
And so I remember weeping before God and saying, God, like, I would never walk away from you. That's not my intention. That's not my plan. But I want to be mightily used by you. And however that looks, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Like, I want a testimony. I want it to impact not just people that know me, but impact people that don't know me, people that I'm trying to relate with, people that I'm trying to save.
Sure.
And if I can't relate with people,
How am I
how
gonna reach them?
impacting am I
Yeah.
going to be to people that are lost?
Yeah.
You know? And it really hit me a little earlier, thinking like, man, I wasn't expecting what was coming after, thinking that as a little kid, thinking just that high faith and high of, man, God, I just want to be used by you, whatever it takes, whatever it entails, I want to be used by you.
Yeah.
And it happened,
Mm-hmm.
probably not the way I thought it would happen, but
Yeah.
it definitely came in a different form than I thought.
Sure.
But anyway, I'm going to just kind of continue on.
Yeah.
Then at that time, a lot of different things, and I might, for people that have been there and that were there at the time, I'm sorry in advance, because I'm probably mixing some of these moments around. One day before school, I was starting to pray before school time, and I went to public school at the time. And I remember I'd close my door and, be in my prayer closet. And me and my sister shared a room at the time. And my sister's 5 years younger than me. So I'd make sure she was either out of the room or being quiet.
Yeah.
But I would just pray. And I had a little whiteboard in my room, and I'd write down like things I wanted to pray for. And one particular morning before school, I closed my bedroom door and I started praying. And I was asking God to just touch me for my day and touch my family. And I started praying for for preachers and for our pastor and for missionaries and evangelists. And then like this overwhelming sense of thankfulness started like hitting me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thanking God for like a roof over my head and clothes on my back and shoes on my feet. And all of a sudden I just started thanking God for my hair. And I was just weeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you I really thought anything of it. I was just a kid, so just grateful and so thankful for just life, you know. And this was all stuff I was being taught in praying and yeah, I just started thanking God for my hair. And my mom had came in. I was weeping before God. I was laid out on my bedroom floor. And my mom came in and was like kind of tapping me like it's almost time. She would do that every morning, like tap me, say, hey, it's like about time to get to school.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. And I would never really acknowledge it. I would just kind of feel her presence, and I heard the door close. And I remember wiping my tears, and after a few minutes of just thanking God for my hair and thanking God for breath, and wiped my tears and went off to public school.
Mm-hmm.
And just never really thought of anything, you know?
Yeah.
So that was, now that I look back, that was definitely a landmark, something I feel like God was maybe preparing me for. When I was 13 years old, I was really getting like, I was in junior high, and I was singing all the time at church, liking boys, just living my best life, you know,
Sure.
having fun with friends.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling super like out of breath. And I remember one day in PE, I was like totally out of breath. I was a very good student in school. And my PE teacher was like, are you all right? And I was like, I'm just kind of getting out of breath. They're like, well, we know you're not going to just make up any dumb excuses. So you can sit out if you like. And I was like, oh, no, I'm good. They're like, Hoffer, they'd always call me by my last name. Hoffer, like, sit out if you need to. And I'm like, no, it's all right. I'm going to just keep running and keep doing what I can do, you know? So I would run the mile at school and like just encourage people
So
that were,
you kept on even though you were
just
out of
struggling with the mile and stuff in school. I'd be like encouraging them, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but I would tell my mom after school, like, man, I was really struggling. And when we went to the doctor, they were just telling me, like, no, it's probably just asthma, you know, like, you're good. We'll give you an inhaler. And when I would do the breathing test at the doctor's, I would pass them with flying colors. And I thought, you know, okay, well, everything's good. I just have asthma, which I did have asthma as a kid. And so maybe it was just coming back. And I was in the percentile to be like super tall. And so maybe my parents were thinking maybe that's what's going on as well, you know, growing pains, all that as a kid.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so then I go to the doctor. A lot of things happened. I had passed out in the shower. A lot of things like were happening. And so one day I am like super puffed up from the steroid I was on for asthma.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm just getting like super blown up.
Wow.
And one day I was about to get in the shower, and something, as I was about to get in the shower, something kind of like caught my attention. And I looked in the mirror, and my stomach, like my veins were popping out in my stomach. I thought, man, that doesn't look normal. And so I told my mom, and we went to the doctors, long story short. And they said, you know, it's probably asthma. Well, my mom was like, lift up your shirt and show the doctor your veins, that are popping out. And when I showed him, the room got real quiet. And she said, you know what? I'll be right back. And when she came back in, she came with like the head doctor of the office. Mm-hmm. And they checked me out and they were doing a couple things and said, you know what? We'll be right back. And when they came back in the room minutes later, they said, we just called Rady's Children's Hospital. They're waiting for you. Don't stop. Don't go anywhere else. Like, go straight there. I thought, that's a little weird. But okay. So my mom and dad didn't know either, what was going on. We're not thinking the worst. So we go straight to Rady's. They get me in right away. And I remember sitting on the gurney and just going through tests. I could hardly breathe at the time. I remember at that time I was sleeping propped up because I couldn't breathe laying fully flat like normal people sleep. And but it was all under asthma. And so as I take tests, the tests were crazy because of that. Because I couldn't lay flat. So you can only imagine doing tests, having to be propped up. And as they do a test, the doctor comes in the emergency room and says, oh, well, we're going to take your parents out and show them something. We'll be right back. And at children's hospitals, if anybody knows, they're usually very protective of the kids. Mm-hmm. They only tell the kids what they want them to know and hear. And so kids are very oblivious to really what's going on.
The severity of whatever issue may be happening. Uh-huh.
And so I'm 13 years old. And I remember sitting on a gurney or laying in a gurney, propped up. And they're all like, the nurses are keeping my attention while my parents are gone away from me. EMTs are coming in, drawing my blood and keeping my attention. And then everybody kind of left. And I remember just kind of waiting for my mom to get back, like thinking, okay, like I'm just probably I was not feeling good. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mom coming. Other people might have been there at the time as well. But what I really do remember is my mom coming in the room. I don't think anybody was there. And she looked like she had been just bawling. And I was like, hey, Mom. I was like, are you all right? And she kind of, yeah, I'm good. I just want to tell you something. I was like, sure. And she was like, well, I don't really know how to tell you this, but you have this big tumor, like this big mass in your chest. It's like a watermelon in your chest. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah. And she just started like silently crying, And at that moment, I felt like I had to be strong for her almost. I felt like, man, I don't really understand quite the severity. I don't quite understand exactly what that all means. But Mom, like, we're going to make it through. Whatever it is, we'll make it, and like God's going to help us.
Yeah.
And my mom just started crying and I can picture her now. She was literally right out on by the side of my gurney and just crying. She was like, yeah, I know, you know. And I was like, at that moment, I felt like God gave me like such a peace. You know, when they say like the peace that passeth all understanding, a lot of people don't really, I don't think people grasp that as much as like I never really grasped that until that moment where it was like, this seems super severe and super serious. And yet I feel such a peace. I feel like the peace of God.
Yeah.
And I just told my mom, like, I feel like angels are here with me. Like, whatever journey this is going to take me on, I just know God's going to be with me. And I just feel, I feel God, like, you know? And probably for like a month, I felt like such a peace, like such a, and I mean, I was innocent. I was still a kid, but like even more innocent. Like I was starting puberty and different things like that. So my emotions and, you know, things were changing, but I felt like such a pure innocence come over me, you know?
So you say like for a month, then did you end up staying there at the hospital from that point forward? They didn't send
Yep.
you home?
Yep. From that moment forward, they admitted me to the hospital and diagnosed me after a little bit, but diagnosed me with a stage 4 rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a childhood cancer. So stage 4 is aggressive because of how aggressive the cancer is, or because of how huge it is, how huge the tumor is, which the tumor at the time was the size of a melon in my chest.
Wow.
So it was literally pushing on my airways. And they said, like, practically because she was singing and super athletic and things like that, that's partly of what kept her airways always expanding.
Oh, from closing up and allowing the tumor to.
They said if that would have never, if I was never singing, which I believe I was always singing unto God, I was doing that unto Him. That's one. And then just being athletic and always running, and, you know, doing stuff, always using my lungs, that I one day probably just could have been walking and just fell over.
Wow. That's a miracle.
Yep. A miracle in my life. Yep.
So you got into the hospital, you were admitted, and
Yep.
you were formally diagnosed.
Yep. Stage 4.
Okay, and then tell me what happened from that point. Did you I know of surgeries that happen, you know, like.
So I one moment that was really powerful. I did a lot of tests in the beginning, and because I couldn't lay flat, there's one test in particular. It was a bone marrow like testing, and I couldn't be put under with any anesthesia. So I literally had to do all my testing wide awake. And one of the tests that I had to do, the bone marrow, they literally, years later, I found this out, but they didn't show me because I was a kid. They laid me on my stomach, and they have like a big drill or needle thing that's huge that they put in your back to test the bone marrow and make sure you don't have cancer in your bones and things like that.
Wow.
Well, I had to do that wide awake with only topical anesthesia on my skin, which did nothing.
Yeah.
So they hurried me in a room. They laid me on my stomach, and I was kind of panicking a little bit because I was like, okay, it was almost forced. And they had 9 nurses holding me down. And it was very intense in the room, and they were just saying like, I had a child life specialist like right in my face. And as I was being held down, they were just saying, you can curse, you can say whatever you want to say. Like, we won't even like pretty much put it to your charge, just
it's such an intense.
Yeah. I mean, it is very painful. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's literally drilling through your bone on your backside. And I remember crying in such intense pain. And they just kept like, it's okay, Bri, it's okay. Like, you can just curse, like, whatever you're going to say, just like, it's fine, And I just couldn't do it. I was like, there's no way. I've never cursed in my life. Like, I wouldn't even know what to say. And so I'm being held down, though, on this table, operating table. And by the end of it, they're trying to teach me how to breathe. And I'm just, take deep breaths. And I have somebody just like coaching me through the whole time. And it was super intense. And by the time it was over, I was so exhausted. And I was just crying hysterically. And pretty much couldn't utter a word. All I was saying was, Jesus, Jesus. But I was in so much pain, it was hard to even say anything,
Yeah.
And like, okay, it's over, it's done, And I kind of feel the release off my body of everyone holding me down so strongly. And I remember feeling so exhausted because I was like fighting, because I was trying to move and trying to get up and kind of fight these nurses off of me in a regard, in one way. And my body was so exhausted, and I had the lady coaching me, and she was like, just keep breathing. I was like, Jesus. Jesus. And I just tears started rolling down my face, and I just started singing that song, praise is what I do when I want to be close to you. I lift my hands in praise. Praise is who I am. So I'll praise him while I can. I'll bless him at all times. And then the song goes on to, I vow to praise you through the good and the bad. I'll praise you whether happy or sad. I'll praise you in all that I go through, because praise is what I do, and I owe it all to you. And tears running down my face, I just started singing that and just worshiping God and praising him, and just thought like, God, I'm not going to curse you. Like, I'm just going to praise you through it. I don't really even quite understand all this,
Yeah.
But like, I'm just going to worship you because God, there's nothing else I know. I don't know anything else but,
Yeah. So that was like a moment of, it sounds like that was like when it really hit home. I guess you could say, huh? Because you talk about how you felt peace through it, but I'm sure once you started encountering different tests like those, that was like when it really started.
Yeah, wow, but still at the moment I thought, I'm just sick. This will be over. They'll give me some medicine. It'll be done.
Yeah.
I'll be back to normal life with my friends, my family, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And being in the hospital for a month, I thought, this is not going away. You know, I'm still kind of here.
Yeah.
My life was drastically changing before my eyes,
Wow.
you know, as a kid. And yeah, you know.
And did you have surgery to get that tumor out?
So I surgically couldn't take it out. I right away started chemo and radiation, which is usually unheard of. Usually they do all chemo and then radiation later, or radiation and then chemo. I don't know exactly all the,
And why couldn't they remove it? It was just in the
because it was
place in the
so
spot that it was
big.
at.
And also it was because it was attached to my heart, and it was
Wow.
attached to muscle. So it would have basically, if they would have done surgery right away, it would have been like an open heart surgery. It would have
Wow.
been a very intense surgery and
High risk.
very high risk.
Yeah.
And so they did chemo and radiation to just hit it hard and just shrink that tumor until it was nothing.
Wow. And it worked?
Yep. Yep. And that year, so I got diagnosed April of 2007. In October of 2007, now the hospital was becoming my home away from home, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that October, I met a lot of kids in the hospital, and that October, 10 kids died in 1 month. And that month, I thought, there's no way. There's no way. Like, this sickness is not going away. I have cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to be like these other kids. I am going to live through this. God is going to help me through this, but I am not dying.
Yeah.
I'm going to live. And I really feel like at that moment in October, it's like I faced death face to face.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was like, devil, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like, if this is to something that I am having to go through, it's not going to take my life.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I'm going to make it through, and I'm going to get through this with God's help.
Yeah. So you okay, so you got that bone marrow test, and did that come back positive, negative?
No, negative.
Negative. Oh, good. Cool.
Yep.
So then what? Let's keep going right into it, because I know that so did you end up going home after that October at all?
Yeah, I was very in and out of the hospital. And doing chemo, radiation. So I was very busy with going in and out of the hospital. I think my mom said I was home one weekend, I think a month or something. Something insane. I was in the hospital quite a bit.
Wow.
And so now fast forward, I do, so then, they were going to start doing like 7 different chemos on me at Rady's Children's, because they didn't have a specialist in San Diego. So my pastor and my parents, they started fasting and praying and looking for direction on what to do, on maybe another doctor or somebody else.
Because that would have been pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. Because 7 different chemos and not even sure if they're going to work or...
Can I ask a question? Can chemo just the intensity of it, can that it in itself like kill somebody?
Well, it's a poison. I mean,
Well, not kill somebody, but can
it's
someone's body
it breaks down your body
sure.
hands down. Yep,
Wow.
for sure. You know, and along the way, I feel like God gave my mom different things to help me. Um, one being Malox, for me to take it like 15 minutes before chemo, and it would help with me not getting sores and different things, which was a total just kind of something that kind of popped up in her mind and really was a God thing. And it helped me tremendously. And it's something that we talk to others as helping others, tell them, and it's helped others as well.
Wow.
And my mom really feels like it was just something God gave her.
Yeah, 100%
It was just
wisdom
Yep.
from God.
Yep. As she was praying and in direction for me and my health, and
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's just one. But anyway, when they were praying and fasting for a specialist or just direction in what way to go,
Mm-hmm.
they got City of Hope. And so they looked it up online, and come to find out it's a cancer hospital up in LA. And you have to think, a lot of kids were going up to Texas, going to Arkansas for like their specialist.
For the type of cancer they had.
Yes. So I knew of kids, plenty of kids that were flying, and you have to think of the expense of all that.
Yeah.
Flying to go see their specialist on a regular basis, and there was a specialist for my kind of cancer in LA, which is about 2.5 hours from San Diego.
Yeah.
And so I remember going over there, meeting the doctors, and as we were going up there, they wanted to do transplant. So because we found out it wasn't in my bones, they're like, to make sure we shrunk the tumor and everything down. But the doctor up there is the specialist. She's going to tell the doctor down here what to do. So though you get treatment down here, the doctor up there is really your doctor and has a say
directing everything going on.
Exactly.
Sure.
What chemos to use, how long the chemos are going for, all that kind of stuff. And so I was getting treatment down in San Diego, but I was under the direction of my doctor up in LA, which was Dr. Sato. Well, so I get transplant. I actually went to City of Hope to get transplant. And
what does transplant mean?
Stem cell transplant.
Oh, okay,
so you can either do stem cells of somebody else's, like people that have cancer in their bones and in their
immune system.
Yeah, or like in their blood is what I should like in their blood. They can't be their own donors, so they have to get a donor to donate stem cells for them.
Oh, gotcha.
So the stem cell transplant, because the cancer wasn't in my bones, I could be my own donor, which comes with less complications because it's my own body. Yeah, it's my own cells going back into me. So like for a week, I donated my own cells, a cool little machine that separates the white cells from the red cells. Super trippy. Yeah, super trippy. And harvested that for like a week. And then when I went back to do transplant, they were telling me I was going to be there for like 3 months, prepare for 3 months. And I remember telling my parents and my family members, there is no way I'm going to be there for 3 months. I'm away from my church, away from my family. There's no way I'm staying here for 3 months.
Yeah.
And my family would just kind of laugh and, like, Bri, you got to prepare for 3 months. Like, that's what the doctor's saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I'll probably only be here for like 6 weeks. And everybody just laughed at me. Thought, Bri, you're crazy. But I can tell you that all throughout my chemo and all that, when I felt like, man, I need to be there. I need to be at church, or man, I'm not going to be here forever. I would literally, some way, some shape or form, I would be able to get out of the hospital, or my counts would go up, or just.
And you could go back.
I'd be back to, I'd wear a mask, but I'd be able to go to church, or be able to be home, which at that time, that was one thing that was just like, oh man, I just want to go home.
Little miracles along the way.
Yeah,
Wow.
But so with transplant, I was like, I'm away from everybody I know. And my room was always full of people in the hospital.
Like medical experts and
no, like friends and church family.
Gotcha.
I always had a room full of people.
Yeah.
Like that was I feel like that was part of my healing,
Yeah, for sure.
Always having a room full of people.
Yeah.
And anyway, so for transplant, I was like 6 weeks. I'm not going to be here longer than 6 weeks. Sure enough, the 6th week, I'm out. And everyone was like, are you kidding me? My counts dropped and they started shooting right back up. And I was out in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And that was just another, just a little miracle. Like I almost felt like God was listening to me, and I was speaking it just as child faith. Just, no, I'm not going to be here for a long time. No, I'm not dying. I just was very set on
what you felt, what you believed, what you knew.
Yeah. Just knowing God had my back, and I wasn't going to die from this. If anything, I was going to come out stronger, and to be a testimony and to be used by God.
Yeah.
And
so tell me, okay, because I know there's more, right?
Yeah.
But tell me about when in your room did you have that? It was a sign of something, right? Or some sort of poster that you had that said something about God will have someone step in to the dance with you or something.
Yeah.
What was that about?
So I had a couple signs. One, a lady in our church had given me, I believe it said, God is faithful. And the other one said, dance with God and he'll have the perfect man cut in.
Right. That's
as a teenager, just, liking guys and going through just changing into it from a kid to
a young
lady, and having all those emotions and aspirations maybe to have a family and get married. And I remember just having a lot of, not just to get married, but also just to move on with life, maybe, because I was very positive and very optimistic in my thinking. Never charged God or blamed God in any of it. But that sign when I saw it, it was actually at City of Hope that I saw that sign.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking through the gift shop and I looked up and it said that dance with God and he'll have the perfect man cut in.
Yeah.
I thought, man, that's not just for marriage. That's like everything.
Yeah.
And in my walk with God, everything. Like, God, I am learning how to completely trust you,
Sure. Give it all up to God.
completely give you my all.
Yeah.
And no matter what I face in life, you're good.
Yeah.
I'm suffering with Christ.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't God's fault. You know, I never saw it like that.
Yeah.
I saw it as just dance with me. Bri, I've got you. And it reminds me, a little side note, when I would pray in my room when I was sick now, so I'm a little older, I remember that sign. I had it in my room for a while. As funny as it sounds, I would be praying and talking to God, and I'd get my hands up like as if I was dancing with somebody.
At the ball.
And I would literally be praying and like singing a song to God and just crying and just talking to God
Yeah.
and just dancing with him,
Dancing with God.
you know?
Yeah.
Knowing that he had my future.
Sure. Yeah.
And it almost reminds me back to that time when all the nurses were telling me, just curse, like, and as much pain and a lot of different things. And honestly, Mike, I don't really remember a lot of stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I went through. I just couldn't. I couldn't charge God. I really always felt like, God, I'm just going to dance with you. I'm going to trust you. I'm suffering with you. I was telling my husband, Christ suffered.
Yeah.
Christ came on the earth and suffered for us.
Mm-hmm.
What makes me greater than Christ? You know?
Yeah.
Like 1 Peter 4:12. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice, insomuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. And I just always felt like I'm suffering with you, God.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what I face, I'm not going to curse you. It was like the 3 Hebrew boys, you know,
Right.
of,
In the fiery
yep,
furnace. Just
I'm not going to bow. I'm going to stand my ground. Whether I die, whether I live, I'm the Lord's.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I always felt that way. I can't say one time I ever blamed God or charged him or felt like it was his fault that I was going through what I went through. If anything, I embraced the suffering with him.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's a hard pill to swallow.
Sure.
You know, it's not an easy one,
Yeah.
but it almost makes me think, man, God, you're answering my prayer.
Yeah.
God, I was so gun ho and so fired up about, man, God, I want to be used by you. And to think, okay, like, you might have to suffer with me then.
Yeah.
And honestly, once I realized that and put all that together, I thought, okay, God, it's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, but I got this.
Yeah.
Because I got you. And
Right.
if you could suffer and make it through, I can too.
Yeah.
And so whether I live or whether I die, I'm yours.
Yeah.
You know, whether I get married, whether I have a family, whether I make it till I'm 18, like, it's all right. Like, I'm just gonna embrace it, and this is my calling, you know?
Wow.
This is what I'm meant to do. This is me being used by you. And here I am. I'm getting the testimony that I wanted,
Yeah.
you know? Not maybe what I wanted,
What
but
you wanted or how you wanted it. Yeah.
never thought it would come this way. But more than anything else, I wanted to impact people. I wanted something that would relate with people,
Yeah.
to get down to where they're actually living, not just, I've just been living for church, living for God all my life. And though that is a great testimony, like you said in the beginning, but I think God saw my heart and saw,
you wanted something deeper, something.
yeah, just
something personal with you and God. I feel like as
yeah,
what you
just
desired. But I think one big thing too is like when you think of people will talk about ministry,
Mhm.
and people see the results kind of
Yeah.
of ministry, of the effort and the time and the blood, sweat, and tears, if you will,
Right.
And people kind of see the Friday night preacher at peak,
Yeah.
But they don't know anything about what that individual has gone through, what they've experienced,
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful thing that you even were mindful to grasp that and know that that's exactly what it was,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. I just always had the hunger for God and to fulfill that in whatever that looked like. I just wanted to glorify his name and make my life to be that testimony, that light.
So, as much as up to this point your story is to that point so incredibly powerful and
Mhm.
touches my heart. Evan was wiping away tears here a minute ago. You got cancer a second time.
Yep.
So talk about that and kind of hit on the landmark moments.
Yeah.
Of that, experience.
So after the bone marrow transplant, I was clear for 6 months. Totally fine. Good.
Cancer free.
Cancer free. Yes. They always say because it's stage 4, it's never like completely in remission. I don't even know why they just said it was like pretty much it's a little bit of fresh air, but don't like get too.
Don't hang your hat on it.
Yeah,
Don't take it to the bank.
Just breathe a little bit,
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I was at church and I started getting like a really bad headache, and I was singing at practice, and I walk off the platform after practice, and I'm like holding my head, and I'm like, oh, dude, I have a horrible headache. And when I walk off the platform, I'm like kind of holding my head, and as I'm walking, I like bump into somebody, one of the girls in our church. And she's like, Bri, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm good. And she was like, you don't look good. And I was like, I'm fine. I just have a headache. She was like, okay, well, maybe you should go sit down. I was like, and being my stubborn self, I was just, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not glass, like I'm tough,
Sure.
so, but I obeyed and went, go and sat down. And I really don't remember anything else. But all of a sudden, like, I don't even remember prayer or anything. I just remember the music starting, and it was so loud. I was like sitting in my seat, my head was just pounding, and I was like, my mom was home with vertigo, and I looked over and told my aunt, I gotta go home. And church was starting, but the music was so loud. I was like, I gotta go home. I just gotta go home. I felt like nauseous. I was just like not feeling good.
Yeah.
So my aunt said I didn't look good at all. And she was like, she didn't even question me. She just, let's go. So me and Tia, my aunt, we start heading home, call my mom. And she's like, yeah, just come lay down with me. My world's spinning. So, just
Your
come
world
lay
could
down.
spin next to mine.
Yeah. And so I get home, come lay down with her. And in the matter of minutes, I start convulsing.
Wow.
And my mom's home with vertigo. She's laying right next to me. And so she calls my aunt, and paramedics come, call 911. The paramedics come. They rush me to the hospital. They do emergency surgery to release the blood in my head because my head was starting to swell. And then they sew me back up, and come to find a tumor size of an 8-ball in my head.
Oh my goodness.
And this is kind of a harder part for me to really remember, because to be very honest, I don't really remember too much of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember more of the aftermath of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can remember and what I was told is I had 3 brain surgeries in 2.5 weeks. On the way to the hospital, from my house to the emergency room, I had died. They brought me back because I was under 18, so they didn't even ask for consent. They just brought me
Revived
back.
you?
Yep. And my mom's world was spinning, so she was like, just barely trying to touch the edge, trying to get dressed, and just trying to, don't leave without me, like, don't take her without me. I'm going too. And my mom said the moment she got in the ambulance, practically, it was like her spinning went away.
Vertigo went away.
It was like God was helping her,
Right.
and helping me fight, basically. And so they did the first surgery. They found testing. They found the 8-ball in my head. They were pretty much telling everybody, you better just enjoy the rest of her life. She's going to be a vegetable. Like, just
Prepare.
Yep, exactly. Just prepare and, whatever.
Wow.
So they did the second surgery and took the tumor out, but they left like an inch of the tumor in my head.
By accident.
Kind of by default, I guess, because the brain is so bloody. And they only have so much time. It's very intense.
Mm-hmm.
Because they only have so much time probably to keep that open, the brain open.
Oh, I see.
And it's a bloody procedure.
Sure.
they only had, so much time, and they tried to get as much as they could until sewing me up again. And when they tested again, they saw that they left an inch.
Oh.
And so then they had to go in the third time and not only get the inch, but then scrape a little bit more to make sure they got everything,
Oh, my goodness. So 3 brain surgeries?
3 brain surgeries in 2.5 weeks. So that 2.5 weeks, Mike, I don't remember at all.
Wow.
But, yeah. So, so the first surgery was at the emergency room. The second one was at Rady's Children's. And when they left an inch, my specialist up in City of Hope said, okay, we're not messing with this. You need to drive her all the way to City of Hope, and we're gonna operate on her. I'm waiting till you get here. So as far as I know, the story goes, everyone packed and we drove all the way to LA. Yep. And my doctor, it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and my doctor was still waiting for me.
Wow.
Until I got there. So they did emergency surgery, took it out. And this is where I feel like the real healing and like maybe the impact of the cancer story really gets me, because it was like, not only is it now like physically lost my hair and all that, but now like because of the intensity in the tumor in my brain and attacking where the tumor was in the back of my head, it's like kind of where the eyes function.
Mm-hmm.
So my peripheral was not very good
Thrown
at all.
Off.
Yeah, like I remember testing a lot for my eyesight and all that kind of stuff. And one story that I was told, because I don't remember, like I said, any of it, they said for me to leave the hospital or something, I would have to walk in a straight line. And my mom was like, pretty much like, okay, let's see. This is going to show where she's at, kind of thing. And my mom said that I walked in a straight line. And she was like, it was like angels were
holding you up.
Like holding you up and like guiding you straight.
Yeah.
Because your eyesight was
horrible.
I don't even remember it. So
yeah,
that just tells you right there, like I was completely out of it,
Wow.
But then waking up, obviously the brain and your body kind of has a weird way of remembering or knowing the trauma that you've faced, but not grasping how you got there, kind of, in a way. So I don't remember any of the details of, any of that. But also when they said that I was going to be a vegetable and just, enjoy the last of whatever's pretty much left of her.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before the third surgery. Sorry, not before the third surgery. This was, they had to make the decision, enjoy the rest of her life or do the third surgery and try to save her life.
Yeah.
But she might be a vegetable and...
no guarantee.
Yep, no guarantee. And so praying, fasting. My mom, if you know her, she's very behind the scenes, but she's a fighter, and I think it's probably partially where I got
partly
that from.
Where you got it.
And so she was like, well, we're gonna if she's gonna die, we're gonna die trying. fighting till the very end,
Yeah.
you know? And so they didn't know what to expect. That's what I was told. Everyone was just expecting probably the worst, just
hoping for the best,
hoping,
maybe expecting, preparing for the worst.
exactly.
And
didn't know what to expect though,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And so when I was coming out of anesthesia, they were talking to me, I think, and telling me to do things, and I was like punching and kicking with the side that they said was going to be paralyzed.
Wow.
And my parents and Pastor and Sister Bertram were like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, just such an answered prayer, you know.
So many landmark, like, God moments in these stories that you're saying. It's incredible.
Yeah, just like, are you kidding me? Like, she's wiggling her toes and she's, you know, like,
the side that she's
she
supposed
can
to be
hear
paralyzed.
us.
Yeah, she can walk the straight line.
Yeah, you know.
Wow.
She's moving.
Yeah.
She's fighting, you know. And it was like just such a breath of fresh air to them. Is when I hear them talk about it, it's just like that's the feeling they give off is just, Bri, when we saw you punching and trying to take out the breathing tube.
Get me out of here.
Yeah, it was like, this is Bri. Like, she's fighting.
Yeah.
She's her same self, even though she might not remember.
Sure.
Her inner self is coming out, and
Yeah.
she's fighting, you know.
So you eventually, it was brain cancer?
Yep.
So the brain
it was
cancer,
a brain tumor.
it went into remission, or the tumor, the removal
so they
of
just
the tumor,
removed it all.
and that was success.
Yep. And then when they did chemo the first time, I think I got super sick, and so they tested me again because I was like, oh man, I don't want to go through this again. Another, like,
You already knew what was coming by
time.
this point.
Yeah, like, this is 2 years into it, you know?
Wow.
And I was just cancer free.
Sure.
And then now I'm back in the hospital, you know, and at that time still away from my friends.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to be normal, you know, just whatever normal looked like. But I just wanted to go back to living life. And so I remember, like, oh man, no way. It's
so whenever you were whenever the brain surgeries were a success, and how old were you when you were just finally, for the most part, in the clear? Like, even from every time you got cancer, from the very first time up until you were just, I guess, cleared, right? After all the however many times.
So
how long were you sick?
Probably since from 2007 to 2015.
Wow. Just in and out of hospitals, treatments, medical facilities.
Well, all my teen years for sure.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So the brain cancer, though, is what really impacted me.
Mm-hmm.
The first cancer, it was like, okay, cool. Like, I had God moments, but it was like, I'm still the same Bri, super outgoing, singing, hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Getting sick the second time, I was older, and it really impacted me.
Especially being that it was
my brain.
And was there like a percent of chance of living that you were given?
Once it was taken out, the tumor was taken out of my head. I think everything was good, But I'm saying the healing process was more like I felt very inadequate.
Yeah.
I felt very like, man, I remember one time I was not learning, I was writing. This was maybe a year after the whole tumor in my head and all the surgeries. Healing, it's taken years of healing from the brain surgeries. And as I was writing, I was actually thinking of like writing my testimony, writing stuff that I had went through. As I started writing, I wrote like a paragraph, and I told my sister, I was like, hey, Morgan, I was like, read this. I was like, see how it sounds. And she read it and she looked at me and was like, Bri, this makes no sense. Like, this makes zero sense. And I was like,
Oh, because your
I was
cognitive
like,
function.
wait, what do you mean? Because it made sense when I was writing it.
Yeah.
I knew exactly like what I wrote, you know? So then I take my paper back and I start reading it, and I'm like,
Totally something else.
this sounds like a bunch of gibberish. Like,
Yeah.
this makes no sense.
Wow.
And that was like a big, like strike on my confidence.
Sure. Yeah.
A huge,
Yeah.
even honestly, probably to this day, like a huge, knock on my confidence. Like, now I'm not just sick. Now I can't even speak. Like, who, like I really, God, I'm really going to need your help because,
Yeah.
and as time went on, people were saying, wow, powerful testimony. Like, Bri, you need to write a book. I was thinking, man, yeah, sure. And as I would go to write,
You would struggle.
it made no sense.
Wow.
And I just thought, yeah, I don't know how I'm ever going to get that done.
Yeah.
Because I can barely talk. Like, I don't even make sense, And that was a really big, like, struggle for me,
Yeah.
of I didn't get to finish high school the way everybody else did,
Right. Yeah.
and everything I'm writing down, though it makes sense in my brain, it makes no sense. And so how am I supposed to communicate and even be a testimony, tell people about what God's done for me when it doesn't, I can't even
articulate what you feel or what you
what
want
has really
to say.
happened to me, or
Yeah.
And so that was a big struggle and a big, like, just knock on my self-confidence, and feeling very just inadequate,
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say
Over time, God
really helped me with that.
healed you in that realm as well.
Yeah.
Wow. So you went from a little 10-year-old girl who really started seeking God and loving God and desiring more of God to be used. And shortly after that, you ran into some very unfortunate circumstances, got sick. God was with you the whole time. God healed you. You got sick again. And with all that being said, Bri, I want to ask you like two more questions. The first one, well, maybe it's not a question. Maybe I'll say this part and then I'll ask you one question. Now that I know, and you can add if I'm missing anything. Now you are the head and lead of the kids choir, and they do an incredible job every time they jump up on the platform, and you give it your all, and you can tell when you're leading kids choir, even the adult choir when you get to lead an adult choir, but when you're leading the kids choir, like it takes a very special talent to be able to get those kids their attention and have them follow the song and sing it right. And you do an incredible job at that. You're a worship leader. As Pastor says, you rock the flock.
Yep.
I know that what else are you like directly involved in? Like obviously you do
singing, praise singing.
Right, you praise sing, you're still singing.
Yep.
Still singing. That's powerful, incredible. I know that you've been a very good like in reach kind of used in that realm a lot with my sister for a good while.
Yeah.
And Bri, I want you to answer this question like from your heart and as God leads you. What would you say? How would you inspire the next generation right now with whatever comes to your heart?
Yeah. I would say develop a prayer life. Really seek God. Live for God with every part of you. Get involved. It might not always look like how you think, but if you really seek God, you will find him. I'm living proof. There's so many others that are living proof that if you seek God and are really crazy about him, he's crazy about you. He's ready to pour out blessings and use you for his kingdom in whatever shape or form that looks like. And everybody's cross is different. And you might be called to do something that you never thought you'd do, but I can promise you God's going to see you through.
Yeah.
And just keep your head up and keep worshiping and dancing with God.
Yeah.
Because he'll see you through. And now 31 years old, never thought I'd see 18 and I'm 31.
31 years old.
I can't believe it. Married for going on 6 years to the love of my life. And he was right underneath my nose.
The whole time.
And, it's crazy because it's like, God, you're still doing it. I'm dancing with you. I'm trusting you. And you're fulfilling every little girl's dream. You're fulfilling that in ways that blow my mind, that I never saw or thought, saw in the future coming.
Yeah.
But all I can do is, man, God, you are so good.
Yeah.
You are incredible. You blow my mind.
That's incredible.
And I'm just so grateful that to have this opportunity, but to also that God has really given me a testimony.
Yeah.
To use for his glory.
Amen. Wow. That's awesome. And I know we can literally sit here for several hours, but for the sake of a podcast episode, let's wrap this episode up. And it's literally, I told your dad, I told Brother Tim, I told everyone that's come onto the podcast, we're gonna have to do a part 2 and get into more of the details, I'm sure there's many details that you didn't even talk about today, and we'll just have to do it again.
Yep.
So, Bri, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your heart and opening up like this. Things you said I never knew brought me to tears, and just a great reminder for me of how great God is, how
Amen.
merciful God is, how sovereign God is. And I just want to thank you for coming on and taking the time today. And also to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. We appreciate all the support. You can follow Landmarks on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, a few other different podcast platforms, wherever you listen to your podcast. Please feel free to leave a review, drop a comment, let us know what you guys think. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. God bless everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.